So there's different, we know that our biology is affected by something called a circadian rhythm, right? Which is basically how light or darkness affects our biology, right? And there's different colors of light within the natural wavelength of light. That's why at sunrise and sunset it's red in the sky, pink in the sky sometimes. So that wavelength of light is red laser light, and we know that red laser light activates your mitochondria to produce energy. So you can start to understand now why we put these things together. Yeah? So activate the mitochondria, give it what it needs in the fuel into the blood, and usually after that we put you in the oxygen chamber and flood your body with oxygen, so then now combustion at a cellular level is supercharged. Right?
You're taking all my questions.
Yeah, there's going to be more. You got more. You got more. With that energy, you're going to be coming out with questions. So yeah, so that's basically what we're having done, and I'll pass it over to Louis.
So you're probably all wondering why you're here, and I've told everyone loosely, but the purpose of tonight is really to bring everyone together around a common theme. And the reason all of you have been invited is because at some point we've had a discussion individually or as a group as to what health means, and what health span means, and what preventative health means. And I feel like in our culture we have an issue where we've got unprecedented levels of obesity, we've got ill mental health, and the only health care available tends to be care for trauma eventually when we get to that point, and there's very little information available on what we can do to, one, aid our health span, and two, aid our athletic performance should we wish. So when I first met Dr. E, and we had the first few discussions, I was like, I wish I could involve some of the people that I love and care about in this chat. And for many of us in this room have had various conversations as to, it could be vaccine injury, it could be athletic performance, it could be optimizing health, it could be plant-based diet. And so the conversations that Dr. E and I have had around these topics, I found to be hugely informative for me, and I wanted to share that information with you guys. But equally, I've been introduced to some of the treatments that Dr. E and the team at Human offer here. And so I wanted to have Dr. E explain what those treatments and protocols are, because when I try and do it, I bastardize it and get it wrong. So it makes more sense to have the doc himself explain it. And then on an individual basis, some of the information that I've been able to take away and implement as to what we can all do outside of this, right? Because we don't always have access to, it's not democratized to the degree that anyone on the street can come in and sit in a hyperbaric chamber. So
not yet,
but it will be. So I guess a good way to kick off, and probably a trend word that we hear a lot at the moment is biohacking, right? It's becoming very, very popular. We're trying to optimize our bodies for performance, longevity, health, etc. So can you talk a little bit on what biohacking means to you?
Yeah.
And what some of the core principles are?
Yeah, of course. So biohacking is biology hacking, right? It's basically what we all do day in, day out. Even when we're having a shot of vodka somewhere to get into a certain state.
You looked at me when you said that.
Yeah. So you told me about this. But it's basically what we are, all scientists, right? And we're all kind of adjust the way we live our lives, what we put into our body to get desired states. But ultimately, we're all biohackers. But you know, being a biohacker or someone that is just someone that's aware of their body and the impact of whatever they're putting into their body, and being conscious of how it affects them in their state. Not just what goes into the body, what goes into the mind. Yeah, what goes into the ears, what goes into the mouth, you know. And then on top of that, how we sleep. And so, you know, these are all forms of being able to hack your biology, because they all affect your biology, right? Exposure to light affects your biology. Food that goes in affects your biology, right? Exposure to stresses and your response to stresses affects your biology. This vehicle, it really is a vehicle that we have. We're carrying our consciousness in, right? And I really want you to take a moment and just come out of your body for a second, and just appreciate that this is just a car. It's a vehicle for you to drive. But it's so fine-tuned and adaptive to its environment that we're just creatures of habits, right? Like, we hardwire ourselves over time to think in certain ways, to behave in certain ways by the environment we put it in. So Yeah, so that's basically what biohacking is utilizing, just being conscious of things that you do to affect your biology for a desired outcome. For example, wanting to have more energy, wanting to be able to focus for the talk, wanting to be able to be present for your children or your loved ones, or your family and friends, etc. Yeah.
We hear a lot of talk now about longevity, health span. You're going to love telling everyone what your biological age is. Do you want to just do that quickly?
Yeah, I posted it the other day, right?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, so I'm 38 chronologically, and there's companies that do biological aging tests now, and it is a great science, but there's different ways to measure biological age. The one test that we like to measure biological age is looking at glycans. Glycans are glycation indexes within your body that basically reflect how much inflammation is going on in your body. We now appreciate that inflammation is what ages you the most. And my biological age is 23.
Okay. I've not done mine
you
yet.
know what? I feel like an absolute idiot just saying it like that, but I'm not like showing off or anything.
No, knowing that. So you're not only well qualified to speak on this topic based on what you know, but
knowing that I'm going to Oceania this weekend. I'm joking.
You're
what I used to do when I was 20. Close
you're obviously living it. So what are some of the, before we go into what you guys do here and some of the stuff that you guys have done here, what are some of the things that all of us can do to start to reverse our biological age or keep that biological age down? What are some of the core principles that allow people to have a longer health span?
I think the number one is develop state consciousness, and look at yourself as if you're a car. I use that as an analogy because it speaks to me. But the more you rev the engine, the faster it ages. Now then, it's okay. What does revving the engine mean from the human body? That's number one question. And then the environment within which you put the car. Corrosive, acid rain all the time, bad environment, the more wear and tear you're going to have on the chassis, the body, and some of the mechanisms as well. So it's how you rev the car and how you look after the car. Yeah? How much do you use the human body and overuse it in certain fields or put it under a lot of duress or stress? And then how are you looking after, how are you providing an environment for it to recover, recharge, heal, self-heal, and so we can go into those. Yeah. So talking about the stresses that we put our body under, let's start with, hey, welcome, come and join us. How you doing? What's your name?
Sharon.
Nice to meet you.
You too.
Thanks for joining. So some of the stresses we put our body under can be toxins. Okay, so overexposure to toxins, and I start with that because cities and urban environments are very toxic. Toxins, pollutants in our air, pollutants in our food, coming from the soil, and pesticides and microplastics, and so that's a starting point. You can more broadly define toxins, but we have processes within us that remove toxins called detoxification processes. So if we're thinking about longevity strategy, just from that one perspective, reduce toxins, support detoxification, identify whether someone detoxifies well, and for them, how you can support detoxification. So toxins. Second, stresses that you can put in your body is also coming through what you eat, right? So the types of foods that you're eating require processing. Now, the more man-made the food is, the more processing it requires. So additives, anything synthetic, requires processing by your body because it's got to get to the good stuff. It's got to remove the bad stuff. Right? So again, that's taking energy, that's revving the engine, right? So the more cleaner you can eat, if it's God-made, then it's easier to process. Other kind of stresses that you put you under, overtraining. Okay, that some people need to do that for a living, and so then if you're being aware of your overtraining, biological age of professional athletes is actually older than their chronological age, just because of the amount of inflammation they're putting themselves under, and this is why there's a big difference in athletes. Some athletes that go on to play like Ronaldo goes on to play 37, 38, you know, arguably just as good as he was 5 years ago, 7 years ago potentially, but some footballers don't. That's just in football. Some tennis players is another example. And then, you know, so you can start to see the importance of what you can do to recover and repair, even despite putting your body under increased duress. Okay, so training is another one. Stress kills, right? And it's our perception of stress, not necessarily the external stressor. So becoming state aware of when you're stressed and when your body's taking you down a stress response. What is a stress response? Breathing faster, becoming agitated. And we've all had road rage or got angry at times. We realize our body wants to take us down a pathway, you know? But becoming aware that when we're going down that pathway, and then being able to put strategies in to slow yourself down, to bring yourself back, and to come back to a centered state. Yeah. So stress response is probably the biggest rever that I'm finding. And then you can start to identify, okay, what activates your stress response? It's not always stress, but it's perceived stress. What's a perceived stress? Something that your biology perceives as stress. There's conscious and subconscious. Conscious perception of stress is obvious, like, you know, it's like, you know, what we typically talk about stress. Subconscious perception of stress is things that we not aware of that are stressing us. Blue light exposure in the evenings, repetitive, you know, social media messages constantly, or like, you know, when you're scrolling, you're seeing loads of things that's keeping you awake and alert. That's a perceived stressor, and your biology responds to that all the time, right? It's keeping you awake. Okay, your biology is like, okay, I need to stay awake. I need to stay alert. Cortisol, stress responding hormone, goes up, right? Blood sugar goes up. Insulin resistance, you stop responding to your insulin. These are all, insulin is one of the most pro-inflammatory molecules, actually. And so you don't get into deep sleep. And when you don't get into deep sleep, because your body, your circadian rhythm is not resetting, you're not producing melatonin nicely in the evenings, and your cortisol is staying up, what happens is you don't regenerate, because we have different stages of sleep. And it's in our deep sleep is when we produce T cells from our thymus gland to give you a healthy immune response. It's when we produce stem cells from our bone marrow. It's when our growth hormone is secreted. So you're starting to see the sequelae, and that can all be prevented through practicing state awareness. Just practice it. You know, take a moment when you're next going down a pathway. Just take a stop. Okay, this is my biology taking me down a pathway. Take a step back. How do I then develop tools and practices to intervene? And then learning and adapting to the environments that you're in to prevent those situations happening again. So those are some of the revers.
But some of us, many of us in this room, are in a position where we live in central London. We work on our phones. Some of us play professional sport, or we play high-level sport, or we train often. And we're in a position where some of these stresses are going to naturally happen. 100%. So there's tools available, both that are maybe more available, shall we say, to a wider audience, and there's maybe some tools available that are maybe more inaccessible to the masses, shall we say. So what are some of the tools that, for both levels, that we can kind of use if we find ourselves in these states of stress often, and they're somewhat unavoidable?
Start with breath. You know, the biggest tool that you have to fine-tune your state is your breath, right?
You've got a breathwork coach right there, so if anyone needs some breath.
He's the man. It's the best place to start, right? And you can start to learn how to play with that nasal breathing, mouth taping, and what's your name? Jamie can tell you all about the different types of breathing techniques for different states. Hypercapnia, increasing your carbon dioxide state. Hypocapnia, reducing your carbon dioxide state. Anyway, that can take you down a path, but you can have desirable states from just breath work. So that's something that's really cool to do. What else? The way I see it is the way you eat, the way you move, the way you control your stress or your stresses, the way you breathe, community, mission, purpose, value, community. These are some of the things in your environment, your body, you put yourself in an environment that you can influence, that are free, right? And heat or cold exposure. And so the other thing I love to do and to help people to practice is cold bathing, ice baths, cold showers, learning. Well, why is that important? Because you will instantly, sometimes even the thought of going into an ice bath gives you a stress response. So you start to become fine-tuned and aware of your biological pathways, so that you can then, outside of that environment, learn when you're going down that pathway. Yeah, because you'll be like, I recognize this feeling. Okay, what do I need to do? What do you need to do when you get in a cold bath? You need to breathe and control that state. You need to get yourself focused, present, away from your thoughts. Another thing is realizing that your brain is just an organ, and it has a function to generate thoughts. And there's different quotes in the number of thoughts we generate, thousands a day. But one of the things that we do, and we're seeing more anxiety these days, because we're not helping people understand that you don't need to listen to all your thoughts. You just come center back, into your body, away from your mind. And trying to help people understand and practice getting into your intuition and letting your intuition guide you, not your thoughts guide you. There's a role, there's a time and place for thoughts to guide you 100%. However, again, practicing the ability of, is my brain just overfiring right now, or is there something I need to respond to?
And the techie stuff. Let's go techie.
Let's go tech. So techie. So we lots of cool tech that you'll see around. If you guys haven't had a tour, please speak to Laura or the team. Will give you a tour. And if you can't do it today, we'll invite you back in. Show you around properly. But in coming up with a suite of technological approaches,
go back and talk about your protocol, and then talk about the thing. That might make more sense.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's different protocols. Might be helpful if I say the methodology of putting the tech together. Yeah. So in our approach of putting these interventions to improve your biology, it came from a lens or a paradigm or approach, which is how do I look at approaches that are going to improve each cellular functioning, the ability to deliver oxygen to a cell, the ability to deliver nutrients to a cell and get them to work better, and to support reduction of inflammation. Yeah. So here we have a few modalities that we love working with. One is hyperbaric oxygen therapy. I was the first here to get one custom made 7 years ago. I was about to get a Porsche 911 Turbo, and then I bought an oxygen chamber.
Way cooler.
Or to you, yeah. And to me. Yeah, so I got an oxygen chamber. The first doctor in London to in the UK to really advocate. It's simple, right? But when we think how simple it is, it just delivers 20 times more oxygen to your cells. Now, at basic level, we know that oxygen is needed to thrive, to survive. So hyperbaric oxygen therapy, I love. Increases your oxygen carrying capacity by 20x of oxygen. Has those benefits that follow are increased aerobic cellular respiration. So there's a saying in healthcare which is the absence of disease causes the presence. The absence of oxygen causes the presence of disease, right? And we know that cancer, for example, cancerous cells grow in low oxygen, thrive in low oxygen environments. So increasing aerobic cellular respiration, the amount of energy produced at cellular level, increases stem cell production. We know as we get older, we stop producing as many stem cells. Increases new blood vessel formation. We get older, our organs shrink because the blood vessels shrink, and we stop delivering oxygen to those and key nutrients to those distal cells, right, and tissues and organs. So I was like, okay, this is fantastic. One of my favorites, hyperbaric oxygen, and we love it so much. We're now setting up our patients with their own oxygen chambers, for their whole family to use. The ones that are lucky to be able to afford to put one into their environment, or teams, or professional environments as well. We've got a first we're calling it a think tank, going into a sales trading office in Mumbai, where there's high pollution in Mumbai, and they've invested in creating a think tank like we have downstairs, where you can go in, hyperoxygenate your brain, and you think clearer, like you said outside. When I did the oxygen, I was like, whoosh, today, right? And you think clearer, because 20% of your blood flow goes to your brain, and your brain's mass is only 5% of your whole body. So huge, massive brain effect. It's also been shown to reverse Alzheimer's, early Alzheimer's, dementia, and it's used after strokes, used after heart attacks to help reperfusion of tissue, right? So blood supply is very important. Okay, and what is blood supply important for? Oxygen and nutrient delivery. It's just plumbing. So hyperbaric oxygen, I can't recommend it enough. If you're serious about longevity, come and do it 20 times a year. If you're serious about training, you want to recover faster, make it a part of your routine, and you will see rapid exponential improvements. Then the other approach is improving mitochondrial health, right? The engine that takes oxygen, and that's where like therapies like NAD+, I love it. I think the best way to get it is intravenously, is shown by lots of different evidence that it's the best way to get it into your body. And you load to a certain level, and then you do once a month infusions to maintain that level of NAD. And when you're on the NAD, you might feel the sensation of being on NAD, which is another whooshing sensation. So we'll just give that a little push. Tom, can you give it a little squeeze and open the cap up?
Am I just the guinea pig up here?
I was on it yesterday. I'm on it all the time. What were we talking about? So hyperbaric. We're talking about NAD for mitochondrial health. Therapy, whole body cryotherapy. How many of you guys have tried it? Quite a few, right? So it's quite popularized. People understand the concept of going to a cold environment to get a physiological response. There's obviously levels to this game, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but the best way to deliver it is a whole body head in to the cryotherapy, going down to minus 140 Celsius, and we're the only ones in the UK to be doing that actually, but the technology is a lot more expensive. Now, you can incorporate that as part of a routine, a regime, and you will get the long-term physiological benefits, which is metabolic flexibility, the ability to create energy when you want it, quickly, right, at a cellular level. You increase the number of mitochondria in your body, right? We all think we're fixed with the number of mitochondria. No, we can create more mitochondria. We're showing that, which is amazing, right? And then it can also be used as part of a recovery routine. So mitochondria, oxygen delivery, ozone. It's one of my favorites is ozone. Who's heard of ozone therapy? Yeah, quite a few of you. Awesome. So ozone therapy is used pre-antibiotics actually to treat infections. In the 20s in Germany, Austria, it came out of there. And it's 3 particles of oxygen. It's O3. It comes from the ozone layer. Oxygen comes down from the ozone layer as O2 because it's very unstable as O3. So we can create O3 by putting oxygen into a high energy environment. The atoms break up and come back together as O3 because that's how they like to, but then they dissociate. We inject that into your blood. That dissociates into O2 and an oxidative stress. Who's heard of oxidative stress? Yeah? Okay, cool. It's bad, right? Oxidative stress, bad, yeah. So we give you something bad to make something good. Because what happens is you start to upregulate your own production of super antioxidants. One called superoxide dismutase, SOD, glutathione production as well. So this is just showing how you can put your body in a controlled, stressful environment to get a desired outcome. A bit like cryo. Cryo does that as well. You know, cold, extreme cold, metabolic flexibility, testosterone increases as well, and growth hormone production increases as well when you do it regularly. So ozone therapy, you know, gives you oxidative stress so that you produce more antioxidants. And what are antioxidants there for? To reduce and fight oxidative stress. And it's one of the major mechanisms oxidative stress is of DNA mutation, proliferation, and which is the starting point of cancers, and also supports detoxification from the liver. Yeah, so it has multiple benefits. So I use it as part of an off-season strategy for my professional athletes, and also for everyone that has levels of inflammation that they want to control. Now, what is the new currency of healthcare? It's inflammation. Now, back in the 80s and 90s, it was about, you know, lipidology and heart disease and stopping heart attacks and strokes, and we did that. Then it moved to metabolism, blood sugar, diabetes, and now it's inflammation and COVID. You know, the reason why it's so dangerous is because it had such a variable response from person to person in terms of their inflammatory response. Okay. And inflammation, and people are still suffering with long COVID, post-vaccines. We see them all the time, right? And we can talk about that, spin that off. But Inflammation is really good to keep in check and support your body to fight inflammation. So I love doing ozone as part of that strategy. And the one that we've recently introduced now is neurofeedback, which is retraining the way your brain communicates from area to area. Looking at electrical activity of your brain, like you would of the heart, like an ECG of the heart, is looking at how the muscle functions from area to area, which corresponds to weakness maybe in the heart muscle, maybe, or arrhythmias and things like that. You can do the same thing. You can map your brain to look at different poles of electrical activity and to work out how different areas of the brain communicate with one another, predisposing you to anxiety, distractibility, focus, propensity, ADHD. We're seeing a lot of ADHD. We're going to see more of ADHD over time. We're going to see more inflammatory conditions over time because of the way that we're engineering our environment. We're creatures of the most convenient we've ever been in society. Whatever we want at our fingertips, and it's having its effects, right? It's having its effects, and I think, and then the social media and having short attention spans and making decisions very quickly, polarizing society. You know, these are all really bad signs, bad omens for the future in terms of why, and this is why we even work even harder at Human to try and help people develop state consciousness. So yeah, I went on a bit of a side thing there, but inflammation is very important, and ozone is a really great strategy for that. So those are some of the tech we use. We also like using health wearables, right? Looking at your real-time physiology and helping you understand how to make changes and seeing the data in the real time. Shit, I slept better last night. Okay, and then you start to put two and two together yourself. You're like, okay, cool, maybe so I only had one drink last night, or I didn't drink last night, and that caused me to sleep a bit deeper, as an example, and I feel a bit better. So you triangulate that information yourself. And then the final piece of tech that we use is just a very scientific, data-driven approach. So, like with anything, it's a combination of how you look and with what you look, right? You know, you've heard that, you know, what lens are you, what rose-tinted glasses. Similar thing, looking at the human body, but looking in more detail, looking at the processes that produce health, not the organs and whether they're in a disease state. It's very different, okay? So this type of healthcare comes before traditional healthcare, sits alongside traditional healthcare, does not replace traditional healthcare. And so it's so getting the data points at the processes that produce health are very important, and that's kind of techy, but more from a biomarker analysis. So we look at over time over 1,000 plus biomarkers. You know, so what you're seeing here at Human, this is an incubator of ideas in and around innovations in science, from a testing perspective, from a therapies perspective, and then from a human perspective, the humans delivering it, you know, and the way we're delivering that model of care. And yeah, so
I've got one more question, and I'm going to let other people ask as well, because I'm sure everyone's got some questions to ask. We're sat in Chelsea. We're all fortunate enough to be in this position in a first world country.
Yeah.
What is, obviously the current health care system we have doesn't deal with preventative care, and we're not being encouraged to pursue healthy and active lifestyles. So how do you see the future of healthcare, and how can we democratise some of these approaches so that more people can access it?
You come and join our mission. That symbol, right? It's our mission statement: pioneering a new era of healthcare for the benefit of humanity. When I was doing this type of healthcare and coming across it, there were physicians out there charging 15, 20, 30 grand for a few month program, more. Even the US now, there's doctors doing the same thing, charging $100,000 a year, $50,000 a year. You know, this type of, they don't look at anything different. They look at the same data points, make the same interventions. And so, you know, what we've done over time is create a systems-based approach. You know, I won't get too boring, but ultimately build systems to democratize expertise, firstly in-house. So now we're delivering this at £195 a month, this type of healthcare. Next step is we're going on a tech journey. We're at a point in time where we can solve a lot of problems with the computing power, which can basically look at multiple inputs and multiple outputs to determine what works and what doesn't work, which is what we need for this preventative type of healthcare, right? Because we'll only adopt innovations. The traditional approach to designing what comes into healthcare is based on me and you have disease, right? I get drug A, you get drug B, I get better, we scale that to more people, and that's it, right? So we have these determined markers, but in preventative or the optimization world, me and you don't have disease. We have a problem, but it hasn't been defined, it doesn't meet the criteria for being a disease, right? Our problem might be brain fog, eczema, rashes, inflammation, energy issues, resilience issues, distractibility, ADHD, you know, but it's not yet defined into the disease states. And so the way to optimize and look at the human body requires an appreciation of the multiple processes, important processes that are going on and how connected the human body and biology is, not a reductionist approach. You said reductionist. Yeah, not a reductionist approach to, okay, gut doctor, lung doctor, brain doctor, diabetes doctor, and breaking that even more in the gut, okay, liver doctor, you know. That's important for when you have major pathology within your liver. But when you don't have major pathology in your liver, you need a more complete, interconnected approach to human biology, which is what this methodology is. Now, to understand the future of that and to make that future more democratized, you need computing power to be able to make sense of the multiple inputs, multiple environmental factors, and the range of interventions to then get to, okay, for you, Louis, you need A, B, C in your diet for this period of time. You need to sleep like this. Try this. You need to take these supplements for this phase, and then we're going to change you to another set of nutrients and supplements. And then you're going to need to, if you can afford to, you're going to need to do these therapies, right? So in our approach, we have the healthcare, which is new questions we ask you, new tests we look at, and new interventions, and a new way of supporting you on that health journey, which is working with us on a monthly basis, that 195 a month, consultations all the time, access available to our team, etc. And then you have the supercharging with therapies. Then if you want to get even faster results, you'll come and do some therapies, right? So yeah, so I think computing power is what we're discussing now. You came to a blockchain event we did the other day, changing behaviors in society, gamifying it, you know, making it fun. We need to embed healthy practices in the society ASAP, because when Web3 pops and Metaverse pops, everyone's going into this environment and it's going to get worse, you know. And so they're going to need to learn to develop even more state consciousness. Our children are going to be given those tools even more. Yeah, so a bit of a monologue there.
I think it's good. I think our experience of the world is determined by the vehicle that we experience it through, right? And so if people go out into the world and engage with other people from a place of fear, because they're in a disease state, their interaction with other people is going to be negative and they're going to pass that on. So I think it's so important, this work, for us all to first heal ourselves, to then go out and have a positive impact on other people and therefore the world by default. So it's important, it's democratized, but at the minute the foundations aren't quite there. So spreading this message has never been more important, especially when we're under attack to such a degree. Forced vaccination, the chemicals in the food, chemicals in the environment. I think it's never been more important. And even if it's not the treatments, it's the information being democratized and more widely available. So thank you.
And look, at the end of the day, innovations can only get democratized by people trying the innovations to begin with, right? And so there are people, and we've been through that, where people are trying these hyperbaric and oxygen cryo, getting the results and telling their friends, telling their loved ones. We've been through that, and now and that allows more people, more demand, more supply.
Exactly.
And the sequel to come off that. Should we open the floor?
Yeah, let's go. Who wants to ask a question or make a comment? Someone go first.
I've got a couple.
I knew Joe would go first.
You spoke of stress. Obviously that's quite common practice, but what about if you've had, I'm not talking to myself, I'm talking about everyone, if you've had quite a stressful upbringing or life, is your tolerance to the problems it causes inside your body decrease because you've had a lot of stress in your life? That's the tolerance there.
So I think tolerance generally decreases over time anyway, because I think generally tolerance decreases, and there's a biological component of that, right? Because we can all remember when we were in our 20s, relatively water off a duck's back, right? But for most people, and then they get into their late 30s or mid 30s onwards, they notice their resilience goes down a little bit. So, however, your body's adaptive as well. So you learn through stress coping mechanisms. And if you're reflective and you have good reflective practice, and you practice coming out of your body and looking down on yourself from a place of compassion, love, because we're just human. Yeah, what does it mean to be human? We don't need to be perfect. We're imperfect by nature, right?
Sure.
And so there's a lot of kind of a lot of ways of thinking that can help you, and people either learn or they don't learn, or they take a lot longer to learn. So the only way to create an environment where you can learn is to be able to step back, reflect, and try and develop tools, right?
The reason why I asked that, sorry to interrupt you, because I had a conversation about a year ago with someone who spoke about stress, and actually some stress is actually good for you. Is that obviously true? Is that still a rever, as you call it?
100%, yeah. So our body adapts, right? So we have controlled stresses that we do here, like the cold therapy, as like physical stresses. But even like emotional stresses can be good for us if we're learning and we're adapting. Yeah. But at the same time, you've got to have the biological reserve to be able to handle that stress. So I often see people coming into us that just like they just can't get out of, they're just trying but they can't get out of it, and that's because they're not putting the habits in place to allow themselves to heal. They're not protecting themselves in their body. They're not withdrawing themselves from certain environments. They're not getting into deep sleep. They're not removing themselves from their phones and those kind of blue light exposure. They're putting crap into their body. So if you can start loving your body through a perspective of appreciation, love, acceptance, as well as putting good, clean fuel in, and creating an environment to allow you to heal and recover, go into nature, getting out what you know are stressful environments, you're then going to create the environment for your energy reserve capacity to increase.
Sure.
Yeah, and our biology can get depleted, so we need to make sure that we create the environment to replete nutrients, supplementation, being on the right supplements for you according to what you're missing. Maybe you're missing it because you're leaky gut, because you're not absorbing those nutrients out of your food and you're driving an inflammatory response with the foods that you're eating, right? So these are all, there's environmental factors, and then there's biological factors that you can look at to optimize.
What about, you spoke of oxygen, filling yourself with oxygen, what about altitude training? So
fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. And that's for everyone that didn't hear the question is what about altitude training?
That was the word that you said, that's why I asked that question, it was the word you used. What did you put it?
Hypoxic.
Yeah,
hypoxic. Altitude training is going up in altitude. A bit like boxers go into in America, Big Bear and other places to train in high altitude. What does that do? That basically restricts the amount of oxygen available to you, so your body creates red blood cells, EPO, and hemoglobin, and increases so that you can take more oxygen out. You need 40 days to do that. Yeah, but you're not. Yeah, and so.
But that's not a rever. That's not. As you call it, your word is rever. Is that not a rever? Or is that?
It's a controlled rever. Yeah, controlled rever. Yeah. And then the other side of it is that you can see the hyperbaric as a kind of tool to high oxygen environment for a short period of time, not forever, because if you stayed in the oxygen chamber, you lose the amount of red cells that you create. You don't need it as much. But in a short environment, it boosts your healing capacity. So yeah. So I like the way you're starting to, it's really important to start thinking in that way. It's like, okay, what controlled stresses can I do? Do I have the reserve? Do I feel like I have the reserve? Am I given the environment to recharge?
Yeah. Thanks.
Got a question. So my question is just like, say for example, if you're somebody that comes down and using these therapies every week for 6 months, say, and you kind of get used to the feeling. You got higher energy, you're getting all the benefits from it. You then stop using these therapies. Is there like what happens at that point? Is there kind of like an addictive nature to it where you can't create the same energy that you used to be able to before you started the therapies?
Everyone's slightly different. I would like to say we are like crack cocaine. I'm joking. That's a bad thing to say. But feeling good is nice. Feeling present is nice. It's nice to have the clear energy, focus, attention, presence. Yes, the therapies help you achieve that in the shorter run, but in the long run, it's the healthcare that helps you do that. Right? It's the testing, correcting imbalances with the nutrients that you're missing, that you might need because you might have a genetic problem with methylating. We see time 1 in 4 people do. And so bypassing that, we're giving you a methylated supplement will help you overcome that, as an example, right? Okay. So working out what you need for the longer term and in short term in phases through the healthcare-based approach, supplemented by the shorter term wins, is the therapies, right?
Natural things that you can do. Say, for example, if you decided that maybe move somewhere else and you don't have access to this facility anymore, are there natural things you can do to maintain those same benefits that you're getting?
If you can, 100%. So food is medicine. Kitchen is your pharmacy, right? So you can get to that point where you can get those nutrients from your food if you're really working hard for it, and you've got an efficient digestive tract. And you're working on your kind of environment, your stresses, your circadian rhythm. You're getting into nature, and you've got good practices. 100%, you don't need us. There's like blue zones. You said of blue zones, areas of the world where people live to like really long, over 100. At places like Sardinia. There's a few different places, and there's some YouTube, some TED talks about this. You should definitely watch it if you're interested. And it just breaks down what are the environment to live longer and stronger. And so Jeffrey, right?
Yeah. This is a question about NAD. Would I be correct in thinking that there are certain precursors that you can supplement to increase NAD production, like nicotinamide mononucleotide?
Yeah. So absolutely. So there are both dietary precursors and supplements. So you can get things from your diet, and the supplementation. We don't currently offer supplementation for it. It's a bit mixed. NMN, NADH. There's lots of different discussions around it. We just use the IV at the moment because the noticeable effects that it gives you are instant, and so that's what we currently do. It's one of the more newer innovations in supplementation, nutrient NAD+. I'd say that it's more coming to the mainstream in the last. It hasn't even hit the mainstream, but it's coming to the mainstream over the last year, 18 months. So yeah, that answers your question. Yeah. How you guys all doing? Yeah, all right, cool. So I just want us all to. Can we sing happy birthday to one of my team members?
Is it Kieran?
Yeah, it's Kieran.
Is it Kieran? Yeah, I thought it was.
It's Dr. Kieran. So we're all gonna sing.
You should come and stand on the box.
I think.
Yeah. You gotta stand on the box.
Let's stand in the box.
Hiding behind the bar.
Shall we have a vote?
Yeah.
Stand behind the box.
We have to get in the middle at least. We're going to give you all this positive energy for your birthday.
Thank you. Embrace it.
Do you want to do the honours and start singing?
No, you can start. You got no voice to me.
Monica, yeah. Monica's got a great voice.
Happy birthday
to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Kieran. Happy birthday to you. We got smoothies or something.
Yeah, so there's some.
Yeah, so we're gonna have there's some drinks gonna be coming out, and the guys can explain to you what they are. You're all super magical, interesting people. So if you don't know someone, they're here for a reason, as are you. So have a chat with someone you don't know, and yeah, feel free to hang out for a bit if you want to have a look around. Chat to Doc, we can show you around, and thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll just say, if you're new to the human community, because we're now going to be doing lots of events and building more community events, please leave your details with one of my team if you found this interesting. If there's ways that you think you can support us getting this message out to wider communities, different communities that want to help, we've got a brilliant team that are all in to do free educational workshops to children, and we're all in as a human to do that. So just let us know, let one of the team know, and we'll synergize, we'll connect a bit of mitosis and a bit of meiosis.
Yeah. Doc, you also forgot to mention about the Royal Marsden referrals. I think that's quite interesting.
So just from the perspective of getting referrals from the traditional medical system,
the fact that Royal
cancer
Marsden
patients,
is using this now.
Yeah, so we do get referrals from the traditional healthcare system as well, from like cancer patients to support alongside traditional medicine, orthopedics, bone fracture healing. So a lot of more specialists within traditional healthcare are starting to refer to us.
Vaccine injuries.
Vaccine injuries, yeah, we're seeing a lot of patients that are having this long-term.
We all know someone that's got a vaccine injury. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and long-term vaccine problems.
No, I just had a question that just came to mind. Is it ever too late to begin, like someone like my dad, for example, who's been living his life in a certain way for so long, is it ever too late? Or can things always change?
Things can always improve. Things can always, that's why cancer patients, we're improving the way they're going through the challenges.
I wanted to say my dad became a vegan at 17.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and it really changed his life. Yeah, it did.
So Alexandra's
There's a lot of vegans here.
What's that?
You got a lot of vegans.
No, I gathered and I thought, but actually he did change. I was shocked. When I was a vegan in my 20s, he was just like, get out of here. But then, he did do it, so it is possible, and it's a good idea. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Of course you agree.
There's some spotlight.
Okay, so thank you. And shall we spin some music?
Yeah.
Do you have any DJs in there?
Yeah, Chelsea's a DJ. Right there, Chelsea. She's actually a DJ. Yeah. No, she's actually a DJ.
Oh, really?
She's the bongo.
Oh, really? You get to DJ if you want. That was good, man. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, man. Feel good.